Joining me now, Tommie McNeil, our reporter in Richmond, and covering the General Assembly for us, and we appreciate that. Tommie, love to hear what's on your mind today.
All right. Well, first let's back up a little bit. Eventually, you and I are going to have a conversation about the ticketing in D.C. I just got one yesterday.
It's unbelievable. In fact, I got one. Apparently, blew off the windshield, and then I got a thing in the mail. I owe them $200 because I haven't paid it. I didn't even say I paid the tickets, but it's like wherever I park, it doesn't matter. You get a ticket. It doesn't matter what you. It's like you pay the thing, you don't put it in right, whatever. So I got so many tickets. Finally, I bought a Metro card, and now I will not drive anywhere. I park in front of my studio or have a pass, and that's it. Then I take Metro, cheaper.
Well, see, you here's the thing. You said you park in front of the station. That means you work there, okay?
Right.
And I work in an area where there are plenty of employees, federal employees, whatever, okay? And it's limited parking. So you have to put yourself there for 8 hours at the least, okay? And so I actually talked to one of the meter folks, and they said that D.C. Council actually sends them down there to target the workers because it's a source of revenue, and they know they don't have a choice. So in my case yesterday, I don't have time to move my car every 2 hours like they require. And there are a lot of employees who can't move their car every 2 hours like they require. So I paid using that Park Mobile, app.
Yep.
I paid. I went back out just before 2 hours was up, and I paid again, but I paid directly at the meter.
Right.
It was at $9.29.
Right.
And I put the ticket in my window.
Right.
I come back, and I've got a ticket marked from $9.30. So that means someone was literally watching me re-up and then ticketed me. And that was the case for about 4 or 5 people along that stretch.
Because you passed the maximum of 2 hours in the same spot.
Exactly.
So
but
everybody
there's no
understands
other place to go
right
during that time of the day.
So everybody understands what the DC parking ticket scam is, right? So you park and it'll say maximum time that you can park here is 2 hours, all right?
Right.
So even if you paid for the next 2 hours, right, they will give you a $30 ticket if you don't move your vehicle. So your only option is to move it to another parking location, either a block away or a spot over. Like I've done it where I've gone out and just went from spot A to spot B, and then you're fine because you haven't moved it.
No,
but
you're not supposed to. No, you're supposed to park. Richmond has a similar rule, but they don't they do enforce it. But you're supposed to park like X amount of 100 feet away from the original parking spot. It's not right across the street. It's not the spot in front of you. You literally have to give the impression that you've moved to an entirely different location.
Mm-hmm.
If they recognize your car within that same zone, because that's how it's sectioned off in zones,
right.
If they find that you're still within that same zone, you get a ticket.
So scammy. But look, that's what it is. It's a source of revenue. And then if you don't pay it within their 2 week period, like me now, I've got one for $200 now. And I'm like, I never got this ticket. So I called them up. They're like, oh, no, this is what it is. I'm like, then was another instance, on that Pay Mobile app. Well, I have 2 vehicles on it, right? Mine and Ann's. And, once in a while I'll take Ann's big car up if I've got to move something. So one day I go and I park and I, hit the button. I pay the $8 for 2 hours, whatever it is. But I don't change the car. Mm-hmm. And so I've paid, but it's under the other car, right? I get a $30 ticket for that. Plus I paid the $8 for a car that's in Virginia Beach. It's like, it drives you nuts, Tommie. There's no question about it. All right, look, we can go over that all week, but it is a source of revenue for them. I'm glad I'm not the only person getting scammed on these tickets. Look, we got the anniversary of Roe v. Wade decision, and abortion, a big issue in the State House with some of the new delegates there. Give us a rundown.
Absolutely. I'm referring to this as Roe v. Wade week at the Virginia State Capitol. And the reason why is because they had some demonstrations. They had, whether it's on the floor, whether it was outside, and it's still being discussed. One of the big issues, we had 11 women who were elected to the House of Delegates this past November, and they make women's rights issues part of that platform. Of course, this marks 45 years after that landmark decision. And what happened last year in the House of Delegates is they had this resolution. They passed a resolution. It was a day of tears. And, it's basically saying, the Roe v. Wade decision is a bad thing. And so this year, there was a new resolution to say, you know what, let's scrap that, start all over again, and call it a Day of Women. Let's celebrate this landmark decision. Well, in the meanwhile, a lot of these same, women are saying, if you haven't noticed, a lot of the Republicans aren't filing some of the anti-abortion bills that they filed in the past because there's this wave of newly elected women who aren't going to stand for it. So now you've got more legislation moving forward on the Democratic side, ending the sales taxes on feminine hygiene products, making it easier for women to report sexual misconduct. And, of course, you've got those bills that make it easier, for women to be able to, have an abortion, things along those lines. You're going to be hearing more about that this week. It's going to continue this week. I don't think you're going to hear about it so much next week, but hey, listen, it's the anniversary of Roe v. Wade. That's what you're going to be hearing a lot about. In fact, I was reading an article, Progress Virginia, which is a left-leaning group in Virginia, is actually calling for the DNC to withhold support from any organization, any candidate, any lawmaker that has an anti-woman stance. This is basically anyone who doesn't support issues like abortion. And that's not just going to be this week. This is going to be an ongoing issue. So candidates who don't have a stance supporting these issues may find that they're not being funded.
That's really unbelievable.
Something we're going to have to watch.
That's
yes.
like over the top. I got a couple things I want to get to. Let's get to Senator Bill Stanley, Southwest Virginia. Franklin County had a bill to get Patrick County Hospital, a rural hospital, refunded there. And Dick Saslow, the Godfather, withholding his caucus support for that, holding the hospital hostage in order to get Stanley to commit to vote for Medicaid expansion. Stanley went crazy. How did that whole thing turn out?
Well, this may be a sign of the legislative roots in Governor Ralph Northam that Republican lawmakers were hoping they would see sprout up during his tenure. Apparently, again, just to run down what you just said, they voted last week. They shot this bill down. In the House, a companion bill passed unanimously. But in the Senate, what they did was Senator Stanley's actually crediting Governor Northam, who apparently went to other Democrats and said, we can't take this stance. You need to soften your stance on this bill. It was reintroduced, and apparently the support was there, and it passed. Mm-hmm. So, again, if this is, Northam is saying this is not the way to go about passing Medicaid expansion. We have to be gentlemen and ladies when it comes to all issues. This is one of his campaign promises, and this is a sign that he's trying to keep up with that campaign promise.
Well, and try to govern in a less heavy-handed way. I mean, the way Saslow went about it, holding a hospital hostage in a rural county that people need care, it could be a life-or-death situation. That was a non-starter from the beginning. But look, I mean, Saslow plays hardball, so we'll see how that goes. Let's talk about Chris Hurst, a new delegate, very liberal. Tell us a little bit about him. And he's now got a very anti-gun platform going. Give us the rundown on that, Tommie McNeil.
Well, I think this is an interesting development. And the reason why is because if you're not familiar with Chris Hurst, he lost his fiancée, Allison Parker. She was murdered. She was a WDBJ reporter. She was murdered on air, shot to death on air, along with a companion. And this prompted Chris Hurst to launch a campaign primarily on gun control. Now, and to his credit, I've seen him in several news conferences. He's been tackling environmental issues and some very, very strong, electricity rates and other environmental issues that apply to his region. So it's not just been about gun control. But actually, the VCDL, the Virginia Citizens Defense League, actually issued a memo saying, hey, listen, let's watch this guy because he actually issued a statement, and he's also pushing a bill. This is a bill that gives employers, the ability to screen potential employees better. So if you've got someone like the employee who gunned down Allison and their companion, and they've got a violent past, this employee can't sue because a former employer divulges information that says, hey, listen, you got to watch this guy. We had some issues with him, and he could be a ticking time bomb. Well, this legislation actually gives employers the ability to screen people like that. Mm-hmm. In Hearst, he actually was asked about this, and when his response was a gun violence prevention, he's a gun violence prevention advocate, not gun control advocate. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And he said that he doesn't blame the firearms for Allison's death. He said, mm-hmm. Stricter gun laws would not have prevented her death, right, because the guy who performed this deadly act actually obtained his weapon legally. Right. And so now the VCDL is saying, well, wait a minute, maybe this guy isn't as bad as we thought he was. Right. Let's see how this goes. The bill that he's proposing is not a bad bill. It's a common sense bill. Let's watch him. Maybe he's someone we can work with. So, they're giving some credit to Chris Hearst.
Look, that's going to be interesting. And just so everybody knows, Chris Hearst is like his fiance was shot down in that on live TV. Remember that? Her father went bananas and threatened Bill Stanley. And then I think he beat Ed Yost down there that had been pretty popular. So that was one of their wins. Hey, look, when we get you on tomorrow, we're going to cover the Democrats' assault on right to work. They got a press conference at 9:30 today, Tommie. And also we got scuttlebutt going on. Both Justin Fairfax and Richmond Mayor LeVar Stoney, they want to be the second black governor in Virginia. Tommie, thanks for your time. I'm out of time right now. Keep it right here on the John Fredericks Radio Network.